Welcome, everyone. This is a podcast that me and Mary Caroline are doing on the subject of how social media affects people's involvement with social movements. So, before I actually, before I actually start with the questions, I actually wanted to introduce myself. My name is Martín Rodríguez. I am an interior design major at the Universidad San Francisco de Quito in Ecuador. And Mary Caroline, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Mary Caroline. I'm a sophomore, which means I'm in my second year, second out of 4 years at Kenyon College, which is in Gambier, Ohio. I'm originally from Austin, Texas, but I go to college in Ohio at Kenyon, and I'm majoring in psychology and Spanish.
Great. So, just as a note of interest for the listeners, this podcast is actually a result of a conjoined initiative between my university's general sociology class and Kenyon's Latino psychology class. So, as we're gonna start to talk about, social movements, I think that it's important to actually maybe give a little bit of background. I think that in our time, especially with our generation, right? I think that social movements are very prevalent. I think that as our generation was always kind of thought of like kids that were born already into technology and grew up with it. We're very technology savvy, and of course, alongside with like that or those qualities, we have been continuously exposed to what I would say is social action through social media. I, for example, remember that during the pandemic, there was a very noticeable peak of action, I guess, of Black Lives Matter, for example, as a result of George Floyd's murder and stuff. So, yeah, I want to kind of like ask you how these moments that I think are very, very important for our time or generation have affected you. How was it for you to actually live in that moment?
Well, I'm actually right when you were talking about how the social movements were really seen, how they were being amplified on social media, and then you mentioned the Black Lives Matter movement. I was kind of surprised that it was seen as super like influential in Ecuador as well, because that was like American events, and a lot of it was kind of protest against the American government and what we see as like American systems. And when I say American, obviously I mean like relating to the United States, obviously, and like our government and our police system,
Right.
and some like systemic issues that relate to the history of the United States. And so I remember how those were really being amplified during COVID, after the murder of George Floyd specifically. It kind of set off a movement that wasn't just on social media. Obviously, there were also protests in the streets and everything, but social media was definitely a large part of it, and it was a large part of how people felt that they could get involved, even if they weren't going places in person. And even younger people, like a lot of people like middle school and high school, and younger people who maybe didn't follow the news or traditional news sources of media before that were learning about things and seeing things on social media, and also speaking out on social media, even if they weren't the type to before like go in person and protest like that. So I think that it really showed how social media was making people more like politically and socially involved.
Right. So I think that
But I didn't realize that this was seen in
Ecuador,
these events were, yeah, like globally,
it
because I
was a
know
very, yeah,
United States.
global thing. It was very interesting. Like from our point of view, I remember that when it happened, um, during like lunch or what do you call it, like the evening meal? No?
Oh, dinner?
Yeah, dinner. Sorry.
Mhm. Yeah, no
We would
problem. I
talk.
forget things in Spanish a lot.
Yeah, like we would talk about the George Floyd situation, and we would say like this is so messed up, and it's just like it was very interesting to actually live it from over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that it's very clear that there seems to be kind of I want to say like maybe ubiquitous connection between social movements and social media. Um, but I'm what I'm trying to do, or what I'm going to try and do, is actually kind of explore a little bit of how that connection, that relationship is seen as, from example, the point of view of someone who is just I don't want to say an outsider. I want to mean like something someone that probably isn't a participant yet, and is just kind of seeing how stuff develops, right?
You mean like somebody who wasn't as politically involved before,
Right.
and then they're becoming more politically involved because of social media?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So as part of that, I actually wanted to ask you if maybe you were involved with any kind of social movement.
Um, well, I think part of the way that I heard about social movements that were happening was a mix of social media and like traditional news media, like I
Mm-hmm.
guess just the news on TV and the news you read. Um, because I would see more of like what my friends and people my age were thinking and saying about social issues on social media. But when it came to, I guess, like older people and more like not professionals, but more people who might have like higher status in government or in various fields or in journalism, like their perspective, possibly more informed perspective, that was what was being shown on like on the news. But it wasn't, you wouldn't really be seeing what people your age were thinking and saying besides on social media. And so having that kind of helps me get that perspective as well of like what other people my age were showing. um and so I would say I was kind of politically involved before social media, but it did
Mm-hmm.
show me more so like how I could have an influence, because obviously I wasn't going to be able to be in like a news article like in the New York Times or on the news on TV saying, "Oh, hey, I want to help spread this message. I think this is important." I didn't have access to that platform, but I could show like I saw that my friends and people I knew were speaking out just in their own communities, mostly through social media. And so I could like continue to share the message, because I don't know if this was a thing in Ecuador as well, but we had um posts that people were making that were specifically like the purpose of them was like to post something and
Mm-hmm.
to tell people that they should spread it as well, or just to spread, like the whole point was to spread the message. And like there were trends, like there was this thing called Blackout Tuesday, I remember, where like everyone was just posting a black square on Instagram, and it was
Yeah.
basically just to spread the message. Which at first, if you think about it, it could seem like, okay, what is posting a black square doing? But at the same time, if you opened Instagram that day, and I mean, you would see things supporting the Black Lives Matter movement on Instagram, like during this whole period, because there were a lot of posts. But on this specific day and days around it, it was just all black squares, and like there was basically no way you could avoid the topic that this was something that young people, and not just young people, but definitely including young people, cared about and wanted to raise the message of.
Right. And and now that we're talking about the Black Lives Matter stuff, do you think that at that time, like social media actually was essential for your involvement?
Well, it definitely had an important role, and I think that maybe it was even more important, like because COVID was going on at this time, so
Mm.
people felt more limited of what they could do in person. So I think in terms of spreading awareness, whenever a lot of people were like stuck at home and feeling like you could get involved, it did end up being a really important tool. And I feel like even now, even without lockdown and without COVID, social media is still seen as a really important tool. But I don't know how much of the fact that it was COVID made it even more important.
Right. So I'm kind of asking this because I'm trying to uh, like make a distinction between if maybe there exists like a dependence from social movements with social media to actually function, or if it's more of a thing of people depending on social media to actually be able to get involved, right? So going with that, right? I want to ask you if you think that this idea of social movements depending on social media is real. Like, have you actually seen something like this?
Um, I mean, I think there's definitely been social movements where social media ends up being a large part of it. Um, and so I do think that some social movements can kind of depend on social media because that's just how they end up spreading the word. Way more than they could ever do without social media. Like for example, I know that people, when they're trying to get people to like sign petitions, they'll distribute it on social media, or when they want to show something that's happening that they think more people should know about, social media is the way that they really get the word out there. So I do think that now there are social movements, especially that since I feel like a lot of social movements nowadays, um, young people are becoming a more and more important part and more important force behind them. I think that young people really use social media as like a critical tool for spreading social movements.
Right. And what do you think, for example, of the actual way in which, for example, you would be able to get involved with activities that a certain social movement is staging? Like, is that a thing that, like, do you see that, for example, in your case, would you be more inclined to get involved in activities that are only based on online activity, like only within social media, or are you more inclined towards like in-person activities?
Um, I think I personally like would be open to participating in either, like I would participate in an in-person activity or one that's based in social media if I think it's for an important cause. But I will say that a lot of the things that you can do to help a cause that are, if they're on social media, it's so much more easy and convenient when I see somebody post like, oh, just sign this petition to support this cause, and the link is like right in their Instagram bio. It takes like only a few minutes to sign a petition or like voice support of a cause versus going somewhere in person. Even though I'm not opposed to it, it takes more time, so you can't really do something like that every single day.
Right.
Whereas, like, if you're supporting something on social media, you kind of can. There's not really a limit to how many people they can get to do something so small when it's so easy and accessible.
Right. So that's very interesting because when you were talking about the way that we can support social movements through social media, especially this idea of like the link in bio stuff and signing petitions, is it probably like not a worry for you as a participant that maybe you don't actually get to see like the result of that, or how do you understand it? How do you like explain it to yourself, maybe like in the way events unfold, I guess?
I mean, definitely when I'm seeing something that like is just asking you to repost something or sign a petition, I know that those actions are very, very small, but I kind of see as myself doing something very small that's super, super convenient and easy, that's not taking a lot of effort on my part. And then so when I'm doing it, I'm realizing like there are probably a lot of other people that are doing this same very small action because it doesn't take much time or effort. And then so when you see it, a lot of times you'll be signing a petition and will say this many hundreds of thousands of signatures, or this many people have reposted or gotten involved in small ways. So you kind of see yourself as just a very small part of a much bigger movement, versus having maybe a bigger part of a smaller group, just because it might be something, if it's in person, you might see yourself in a crowd of people protesting, for example, but there's obviously not going to be quite as many people able to do that when it's at a specific location, and it might take a few hours. Not everybody can do that on that day, but I think they're both important. It's just like the role that you have in that group, but I think they're both important.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm kind of curious because I have actually heard recently like talk of this idea that maybe people's involvement with social movements is getting to a point where it's more of a performative social action, I guess, where it's not so much about like the actual results and stuff. So it has more like a purpose of either showing others that you actually care, or just easing like your own I don't know, like feelings of responsibility and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of curious if maybe you think that this the use of social media can work like as a double-sided sword,
Yeah, I've heard discussion of that as well, and I do think it can be a valid point that I think there's some instances in which people kind of will do actions that are meant to seem like they're supporting a cause on social media, but it might just be that they feel pressured to show support when they don't actually maybe care about it as much, but they just want people to think that they do, and they're just showing support. I think you could look at it as like, well, they're still maybe getting the message out, and they might get the message out to people who actually do care. So either way, no matter what their intentions are behind expressing support, whether it's genuine or not, it still could have a positive impact, in that it could still share the message that people want to get out there. But I think there are some like trends on social media when it's just like reposting an image or something like that, where
Mhm.
it can seem like it could just be kind of performative, or people feel pressured to show support of a cause that they might feel like, oh, everyone is showing support, and this is kind of the belief that is held up as what people should like believe, like it's the right thing to do, or it's seen as the right thing to do, so people feel pressured. um so I think that's like one aspect of social movements on social media that might not be as effective as other aspects, or as when people are doing kind of in-person actions to support a cause.
Right. So, um, you can correct me if I didn't get it like in the way you were meaning it, but I think that if we're trying to like get at an opinion probably of if you think that it's good, this the kind of usage of social media. I think that you do feel it's good, but it does have like its caveats, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think it just has like limitations.
Yeah.
And it can't be depended on like entirely, but I think it's like can definitely serve an important role to help a social movement. It can be really helpful for like getting more people involved and aware of social movements.
Great. Yeah, that's very good. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for speaking with me.
Well, I guess we'll see you next time to the viewers. So
Yes, we'll see. Yeah, and we'll have I'll be asking you questions about my study, which is a similar topic. It's about how misinformation can be spread on media, not just social media, but how it can kind of intentionally target people, which I guess is kind of the flip side of what you were asking about.
right. Yeah, so that's gonna be very interesting. So yeah, we're gonna see you next time.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.